recording.
Hi, thank you for coming to the Vermont Clean Water Initiative Brown Bag Lecture Series. My name is Kevin Burke. I'm an environmental analyst with the DEC Watershed Management Division's Stormwater Program, and I will be speaking to the updates to the Vermont Stormwater Management Manual and also providing Vermont Stormwater Program regulatory updates. The original brown bag occurred back on December 8th, 2016. However, due to some technical difficulties, we're re-recording this today on January 19th, and I have updated the presentation with some more current information related to our program. And if anybody does have questions after reviewing the brown bag presentation, my contact information is included in the presentation for any questions you might have. So the Vermont Stormwater Management Manual, shown here, is the 2002 Vermont Stormwater Management Manual. The Stormwater Management Manual provides water quality and treatment, water quality control standards for regulated stormwater discharges from impervious surfaces. So those are the regulated stormwater discharges that require permits in Vermont, and this sets forth the standards. It also sets forth the acceptable stormwater treatment practices in Vermont, also known as STPs. It sets the design requirements for those STPs, and in addition provides often needed stormwater design guidance to go along with those standards at STPs. So why update the Stormwater Management Manual? As I previously noted, the current manual we have is the 2002 Stormwater Management Manual, so we have not updated that manual since 2002. This is now an opportunity to align design requirements with current statewide water quality goals. It's also an opportunity for us to increase treatment and control requirements. It will require the use of most effective STPs, and now will include green stormwater infrastructure. We're also required to update the manual under our statutory obligations under Act 64, which is the Vermont Clean Water Act. Additional reasons for this update, we are making changes to the design requirements based on our experience with existing stormwater treatment practices and through our experience with permitting in the state of Vermont. We also are making changes to design requirements based on more current research. We'd like to add guidance for better site design and planning strategies, including those associated with low impact development, or LID. We also want to add STP siting guidance to deter placement of these practices in wetlands, buffers, river corridors, and other sensitive areas. So this has been somewhat of a long road. Our manual update timeline here shows that we initiated some effort to update our stormwater manual back in 2009, where we convened a stormwater work group. And then through 2013 and 14, we held a stakeholder process, which provided other considerations for the update that we have in front of us. And then the department contracted with Stone Environmental Horsley Witten Group to draft a manual in consideration of the comments and the process that we held earlier. More recently, we developed a new draft of the manual in 2015 and 2016, and then released that for comment back in March of 2016. We've also had several public and internal stakeholder meetings in March of this past year. And then this summer, revised that draft for rulemaking in consideration of comment. And then more recently this fall, we've passed the new Vermont Stormwater Management Rule through ICAR, which is the Interagency Committee on Administrative Rules, and received LCAR approval, which is the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. The final rule was recently filed with the Secretary of State, so the rule and the manual is now adopted with an effective date of July 1st, 2017. So some of the notable changes in the Vermont Stormwater Management Manual. Subchapter 1, which is the introduction and purpose, sets forth a manual review period, particularly a review of the STPs, to occur on a 5-year interval. That will make sure that the STPs within the manual are effective for meeting water quality goals. The manual was also developed in conformance with the anti-degradation policy, the Vermont Water Quality Standards, and also developed in consideration of the protection of groundwater and current state policy for the protection of groundwater. Subchapter 2, we've made design changes and STP sizing criteria changes. Under site planning and design, we have additional design strategies for meeting the standards on already developed sites. This includes a previously used procedure known as site balancing, which allows for the treatment of existing impervious in lieu of not treating some new, and also a net reduction strategy, which allows folks to reduce impervious surfaces on already developed sites. The treatment standards have also been revised. We have a new standard, which is the post-construction soil depth and quality, and this is aimed at maintaining and restoring healthy soils on developed sites. As we know, soils provide water infiltration, nutrient and pollutant absorption, sediment and pollutant biofiltration, storage and transmission, and also has the ability to decompose pollutants. So this standard will require that a designer either protects the existing soils from disturbance or restores soils upon completion of construction. And this will be through reestablishing or amending soils with organic matter, with compost or other material, and then retilling the soils to restore its function. The treatment standards in the new 2017 manual have a framework of runoff reduction, and this is essentially absorbing the storm, retaining the water on site. This will reduce pollutant export, holds the stormwater on the site, and focuses on practices that promote infiltration, reuse, and evapotranspiration. The groundwater reach charge standard, which was also a standard in the 2002 manual, preserves existing water table elevations. This standard was revised to require more recharge based on the hydrologic soil group of a site, and aligns with the runoff reduction approach in the new manual. For example, A soils, there's a 50% increase, and down to C soils, where there will be a 150% increase in recharge requirements. The standard does remain waived for D soils, which are indicative of clay-type soils. The water quality treatment standard was also revised. This is the standard that provides treatment for stormwater pollutants from the majority of storm events. It's been increased to 1 inch of rainfall or runoff. Previously was only 0.9 inches. This is representative of 90% of all the storm events. New development is still subject to treatment of 100% of the water quality volume. There is a significant increase for what redevelopment must treat. There is a 150% increase. This was previously only a 20% water quality volume value, but that's increased to 50%. Developers also have the option of removing existing impervious and restoring soils to meet the standard. In line with the runoff reduction approach, water quality practice selection is a new piece of the 2017 manual. This establishes tiers of practices, specifically Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 STPs. So the STP selection for designs for both new and redevelopment projects must be prioritized by runoff reduction and by pollutant removal efficiency. And that's in consideration of the feasibility on the site. This is to ensure that sites that are able to provide the best treatment will do so through the implementation of Tier 1 STPs. These types of practices, such as the one shown here on the right, an underground infiltration system under construction, will generally achieve greater than 80% total phosphorus removal and 98% total suspended solids removal. Tier 2 practices include filtering practices like bioretention that might not be able to infiltrate due to soils, and Tier 3 practices include lower performing practices like wet ponds. The channel protection standard remains in the manual. This is control of the 1 year 24-hour storm, and that's to protect stream channels from scour and erosion. This standard now includes an additional method, the hydrologic condition method, which allows for crediting runoff reduction STPs. And that's the hydrologic condition method is essentially mimicking your post-development site as if it was in woods in good condition. So you're basically pulling that volume, that increase in volume, off of your developed surfaces and either retaining it on site or infiltrating. The extended detention and alternative extended detention methods still are applicable in the manual when the HCM method is not used. It's also worth noting that the waiver for expansions of less than 1 acre of impervious has been removed. Subchapter 2, we also continue into site design and STP sizing criteria. All of those standards, the channel protection, which is the 1 year, and then the flood protection standards, the 10 and the 100 year, now must use updated precipitation data. The existing manual has relied upon the 2002 stormwater, existing manual, which is the 2002 manual, relied upon sort of county-specific data that was somewhat outdated. So the new precipitation data is found through the NOAA Atlas 14, and this is actually a tool that designers can use to pinpoint their project location and get all of the rainfall data they need. The important piece to recognize with this data is that it considers regional variations around the state and elevational differences. For example, many of the counties include mountainous environments and valley environments for which precipitation does vary. The new manual also speaks to stormwater hotspots in consideration of groundwater protection. We further articulate the restriction on infiltration from these types of sites and requires lining of certain STPs when there are runoff contributing from hotspot land uses. The new manual separates pretreatment practices from those standard water quality treatment practices. We have these now organized in one section, which should be a little bit easier for designers to navigate through. The pretreatment practice design specifications have also been revised. Some of the options for pretreatment include swales, forebays, deep sump catch basins, and also proprietary practices with department approval. Those proprietary practices, as shown on right, will still require a minimum TSS removal of at least 50%. Non-structural STPs are organized in their own section within the manual. The 2002 manual previously had a section specific to credits. So that's been reorganized. We've also added some non-structural STPs and revised some of these STPs in consideration of some of our experience. There is a new practice called reforestation and tree planting, and that allows for credit under the runoff reduction approach. In addition, stormwater disconnection lengths are now determined by both hydrologic soil group and slope, and will now be allowable on up to 15% slopes, where previously were only allowed on 5% slopes. This should give designers greater flexibility in disconnection of runoff, which is a runoff reduction approach. Structural STPs, also found in their own section, has been revised. Some of the lowest performing STPs are no longer acceptable for water quality treatment. These include linear grass channels and wet swales. They may still be used as conveyance, but for primary treatment, they are no longer acceptable. And that's primarily due to the fact that they don't provide much for phosphorus reduction or sediment removal. Bioretention practice has also been revised. We're looking for a low P soil mix based on recent research that suggests these can export phosphorus when a low P soil mix is not used. Soil mix will be required to be tested for available P. And then again, if a bioretention practice is a Tier 1 STP, it would be designed to infiltrate. Otherwise, it would just be a filter under a Tier 2 STP. Other structural STP revisions, infiltration. We've brought in infiltration testing right into the manual. This was previously located in Volume 2 of the 2002 manual, and was at times considered slightly excessive for requirements for demonstrating that soils will be able to infiltrate. We've also lowered the allowable infiltration rate to 0.2 inches per hour, which will allow more sites to use these preferred practices. Again, infiltration is a Tier 1 STP. There are, however, groundwater protection considerations for these practices, including setbacks from potable water sources and groundwater source protection areas. Treatment wetlands include both gravel wetlands and shallow surface wetlands, the latter being a Tier 3 STP. We've revised the design requirements on these practices to ensure that they provide the highest treatment that they can, including lengthening the flow path, water depth zones, requiring benches and a planting plan, and also in consideration of cold water or thermal impacts to cold water fisheries. A gravel outlet trench is a new design component for the shallow surface wetland. Similarly, wet ponds have similar design requirement changes. The gravel outlet trench is also required along with planting plan, flow path, and other changes to the water depth zones and benching. There are new STPs added to the manual. These include some of the green stormwater infrastructure that I spoke of earlier, including green roofs. While these don't provide water quality treatment, they do provide some storage for meeting water quantity standards. In addition, permeable pavement to allow for infiltration from rooftops, and rainwater harvesting for meeting some of the water quantity standards. This would be through use of a cistern or some other system. Alternative STPs. These are STPs that are either innovative designs or some other type of proprietary practice that might be offered by a particular manufacturer, some type of practice that's not necessarily contained in the manual. We still need to approve those before they're used. However, we may now consider approval through the review of other BMP verification documentation. This includes other testing facilities like the UNH Stormwater Center and other protocols around the country that can verify a proprietary practice performance. Detention and conveyance practices. These are things like dry basins and other types of swales that might just provide quantity control. These have all been moved to subchapter 5, and again, only meet water quantity standards. But they should, now that they're in a different location within the manual, they should be easier to find for designers. Subchapter 6 is an entirely new chapter that speaks to public transportation projects. It further defines the types of projects that are often seen on linear transportation projects, such as redevelopment, major maintenance, redevelopment with expansion, and in some cases, new construction. This section is specific to public transportation because these projects often have right-of-way limitations, may have already gone through right-of-way acquisition, often have water resource and riparian buffer locations nearby that make stormwater treatment difficult. There's safety considerations and often improvements to existing infrastructure. This new subchapter allows for the identification of the best opportunities for water quality treatment and water quantity control in consideration of those limitations. So the next steps with regards to the manual, as I noted, July 1st, 2017 is the effective date. DEC, our department and program, is currently merging the requirements in the adopted manual with guidance. This guidance will include photos, schematics, and other important information that will be useful to designers as they prepare permit applications or stormwater designs. We also plan to develop and release revised application forms, design worksheets, and design tools, including design examples under the 2017 Vermont Stormwater Management Manual. And then lastly, this spring, we're going to be scheduling statewide outreach and training events through many of our regional planning commissions and many of our other partners that we'll set up for designers and other stakeholders. Another aspect that I wanted to cover in this presentation are Vermont Stormwater Program regulatory updates outside the scope of the manual. Act 64, the Vermont Clean Water Act, requires the development of new stormwater management rules by December 31st, 2017. So those rules are to be developed and adopted this year. Rules are going to be considering statewide water quality goals and other Act 64 requirements. The new rules will consider all permit requirements, and the new rules are to supersede the existing rules. Stormwater General Permit. Act 64 also requires the development of a new general permit, which will be applicable to existing development of 3 or more acres of impervious surface by January 1st, 2018. This single general permit will be developed this year, and it's going to include the requirements for those 3-acre sites subject to permitting, but it's also going to have the requirements for new development and redevelopment, and also the requirements for stormwater permit renewal. Many designers might be now familiar with General Permit 3-9015 and General Permit 3-9010. This single permit would be replacing that and all of those permits. So there would be one general permit to apply under. An update on stormwater offsets in our stormwater impaired watersheds. Most of our stormwater impaired watersheds are located in the urban areas of Vermont, including the Burlington, Chittenden County area, also up in the northwest corner of the state in Franklin County in the St. Albans area, and also down in Rutland County. Flow restoration plans that were developed for restoration of these urban stormwater impaired watersheds under the MS4 have been submitted by MS4 permittees, and they're currently under review by the department. We expect that we're going to suspend offset requirements in the stormwater impaired watersheds once the department approves the FRPs. Transportation General Permit, or the TS4, was developed in accordance with the Lake Champlain Phosphorus TMDL and Phase 1 Implementation Plan, the goal of which is to ensure that stormwater discharges from state transportation systems are properly managed to maintain and improve water quality. The draft TS4 recently completed public comment process, concluding on December 7th with a public hearing on December 6th. The Vermont Agency of Transportation will be required to apply for the TS4 coverage within 1 year of issuance. The department has since issued the TS4 back on December 28, 2016. Municipal Roads General Permit, or the MRGP. Act 64, the Vermont Clean Water Act, requires the development of an MRGP by December 31st, 2017. The goal of which is to ensure that discharges from municipal roads are properly managed to maintain and improve water quality. A draft of this permit will be developed and available for review and public comment in 2017. We anticipate that a final permit will be issued by December 2017. The MRGP is to include standards by road type, such as paved roads with catch basins, paved roads with ditches, gravel and Class 4 roads. Towns will be required to apply for the MRGP by July 2018 and complete road erosion inventories and on the hydrologically connected road segments. I should note that there is a map layer of these segments now available on the Vermont A&R Atlas. If you have any questions, I'd suggest contacting Jim Ryan in the Stormwater Program, who would have more information on the MRGP. And if you have any questions related to the presentation, please don't hesitate to email or call me at the contact information above. Thank you.